Well, welcome everybody to the NPS Benchmarks Annual Survey discussion. This one is about how Net Promoter leaders succeed. My name's Adam Dorrell, and I'm talking to you from sunny Burlington, just outside Boston, where it's the evening. And I have a co-presenter, another Adam on the line. Adam, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Adam Ramshaw from a company called Genroe. I'm speaking to you from almost sunny Sydney. And it's about 10 a.m. in the morning here, but I see we've got people from all over the place. So I suspect it's day and night, depending on where people are sitting at the moment.
Yeah, it's always great to do a webinar like this, Adam, when we're at the other end of the world. So far, the audio sounds great to me. So without further ado, let's get into this. So just to set the scene for everybody that's come on the line here, we undertook a survey with some of the leaders and the professionals in the Net Promoter world. We've been running the site Net Promoter Benchmarks for quite a long time. And also together with your list, Adam, we invited NPS practitioners around the world. We got something like 640 responses from companies big and small, and there's some fascinating stuff here. And Adam, I know you were able to dig into some of the results as well. What were some of the first impressions that you got?
I think some of the first impressions were that the data, there's a lot of data there. It was excellent data, a very large sample size, which makes it a lot easier. But also quite nice, I think there was a good split between B2B and B2C. Sometimes I get questions about whether Net Promoter is great for B2B or B2C, and the real answer is it's actually good for both. So that was to me, that was good. It's a good balanced response, a set of responses and lots of detailed data. There's a couple of analysis pieces that I'll talk about in a few minutes when you get to that slide. But yeah, there were some really good kind of ideas that came out of the process. So it was excellent.
Yeah, I was, to be honest, I was completely blown away. I thought we'd get something like 200 responses. And so when we got above 600, I mean, we were really astonished, actually. So it took quite a lot of time to pull everything together on that. But a great spread of industries, size of companies, geographical stuff, and, you know, as you said, half and half, B2C, B2B. So I'm really pleased about that stuff. Now, let me introduce some of the methodology that we use for this. The first questions that we asked, actually, was how would you rate your own program? And so what we ended up with, Adam, is a kind of a rating, a Net Promoter score of Net Promoter, which was 34. Now, for those of you who know NPS, you'll know that this splits into at the end of the spectrum. So about half the respondents were promoters, but there was a significant cohort getting up to 20% with laggards. And Adam, I think that one of the things that really came out of this was there's a real difference in behavior between both of these groups, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's excellent is look at the self-perception of their programs and work out what's the differences between the leaders and laggards. And with that information, you can get a really good understanding of what's working kind of empirically for each of the different people.
Now, one of the first results, I mean, you spotted this when we spoke about this. And I'd also like to say to everyone who's listening, Adam and I have worked closely for, well, I don't know, 5 years, I guess now, right? And you had great input on the program, Adam. And you came up with one of the most striking findings for me. Tell me a little bit about what the key reasons for success were and what you found out about that.
Yeah, it was really interesting. We did some independent analysis, as you know, of the data that came through. And to me, it was really interesting because when you looked at the things that the respondents said were most important, a couple came really to the fore of predictors of success for these sorts of programs. And the first one is being able to link NPS to customer revenue. And that was far and away one of the most important items that you could possibly have. So being able to link those two together. The other one was sharing results and comments with customers. So organisations that did that felt that they were having a good program. But then the two big ones, and they're the two that you've got at the top here, which is, to me, the good executive buy-in and the empowerment to change based on feedback. So buy-in, we always know, is going to be important, and I've seen that time and time again. If you don't have that, your chance of success is quite low.
I completely agree.
What's really interesting is that it's not just the buy-in. It's people want to use the program to change their business, and if they don't feel they're empowered to make those changes based on the feedback, then that will reduce their perception of how good the program is. So it's not just enough to collect data. Staff want to do something with it, and if you don't let them do anything with the data, then that kind of cruels their perception of the program.
I completely agree. That I meet NPS practitioners every day of the week, and that is one of the things that really comes out. If they're not getting buy-in from the top management, they're not allowed to change. It's a very frustrating place to be in. But I thought this was really good. There's more reasons in this. Now, we grouped these together in the mechanics of the program in what we call part one of the NPS benchmarks, which is mainly about the mechanics of the survey. I've got a couple more highlights from part one here, Adam, so I'm just going to quickly scoot through them. Again, comment where you want, but for me, what I found is that leaders set the goal of retention and referrals. That was the number one thing that came out of this. That's a really strong indicator of success. Buy-in from the top, that was the thing we just covered on the previous slide. Now, automating and frequency. Tell me a little bit about why you think this is so important to NPS success.
Well, I think the automation process is vital, because what it does is it allows people to focus not on the process of collecting and analysing and generating reports. They can actually focus on the driving of change, which is actually the only thing that's important in the process. So being able to do what I call run the Net Promoter process lights out, so run the data collection, the reporting, getting it to people's desks, it just happens automatically. You don't have to think about it. Yeah. That's a really critical part of the process, because then people then change the perception of the program from we're sending surveys to we're using information to change our business, and that's a critical change in the process.
Yeah, I really agree. There are a couple of other standout things in here. Short surveys, pretty obvious. Don't get carried away by adding other questions. Good coverage. That's not just good response, but it's making sure that you reach all your customers as well. Emailing and don't phone. And the last one I really like on this one is about setting a goal. And this is most striking for me, is that people that set targets for their NPS programs are most likely to succeed. And I really like that. So there's some really good stuff on that. So a lot of that stuff is part one.
Yeah, let me jump in on the goal thing, because this is something that's become quite clear to me when I talk to people. You need to set goals for the program. You need to set NPS goals, like score goals, but you need to be very, very careful about not setting those at the front line, because if you set those at the front line, if you're trying to use the NPS score as a stick for frontline staff, a stick or a carrot for frontline staff, it will fail, and it will fail hard.
I agree. Yeah, you're going to get gaming and all.
The goals are got a bit here.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, a lot of that's in part one, but what I'm going to talk about today is really the impact, the business impact that leaders can have. So we've grouped this into a number of different areas. And Adam, this is what I think we came up with about why or how NPS leaders succeed, and the result's striking. The people that really do this right get 10% retention gains. It's quite amazing. So again, do you just want to talk through the menu that we're going to go through, these points here?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting the mechanics right is to me pretty clear, and that's part of the lights out process. Yeah. Getting back to customers is super, super important. Now, it's important from a retail, from a one-to-one customer perspective. It's also critical from a cultural change perspective. Customers, staff see you using the data. Speedy processes, that's part of the mechanics for me. Communicating with customers is really important as well. You need to go back to them and tell them what they're using, what you're doing with the data, so that it shows them that actually you value it. Tracking referrals and linking to revenue, to me, are tracking the value of the process. If you don't at some point link the program to revenue, long term, the funding will get cut from the program, because you need to be able to prove ROI for what you're doing in the business.
Adam, did I lose you on the sound? Are you still there?
I'm still here. Are you still there?
Yeah, I just heard a cut off on that one. By the way, just for people that are listening, we've muted the sound. We've got a lot of people on the call today, just so it's sociable for everybody. If you have questions, there is a question box on the right-hand side. Put your questions in that. We'll try to get as many as we can at the end. Any that we can't do, we'll answer later on. So, Adam, without further ado, let's dig into some of the details behind this. So this, for me, success with closed loop. I mean, many people I know that love to start the Net Promoter program think that it's just about surveying people to the nth degree, right? But we know that the key thing is to get back to customers with the news and doing a close the loop process. Whether it's it's a small loop and a big loop, whatever you want to talk about, this firefighting and so on. But doing it right is really is really the important things. And here we see a big difference between people that close the loop in some form and those who don't. So the leaders are 80% of them are doing this, but up to 30% of NPS laggards are not doing the follow-up as they should be. I mean, any thoughts on this? This is pretty bad practice for the people that are not doing it. But who's doing it right?
Yeah, there's a lot of organisations that we should be doing it right. You've put 48 hours in here. We've got customers who are looking at 2 hours response rate on some of these things. So really tightening that closed loop and making sure that customers know what they're saying is being heard. Yeah. And not just following up with negatives, but also following up with everybody that comes back. So it's really an important part of the process from as I say, one-to-one with customers to say, hey, we've heard you and this is what's happening and how can we change it? Yeah. Typically, customers are shocked that anybody's called them. I mean, that's a really big part of the process. The calls aren't nearly as bad as they sound like they might be because customers are actually really happy to hear from the organisation. But then it's a great cultural change thing, we're closing the loop, we're talking to customers, we're using information. It's not just turning up on somebody's desk and being put into a monthly report that nobody ever cares about. So it's important from a perception perspective as well.
I agree. Now, as we move on to the time thing, you mentioned that you've got some clients out there doing less than 2 hours. I mean, that's amazing, right? That really takes, first of all, management buy-in to push the company to do it and process excellence to make that happen. I mean, we see here NPS leaders doing it, a third of them are doing it in 48 hours, and half of them are following it up in a week, which is pretty amazing for some companies, let me tell you. So what are some of the techniques that people are using to follow up things in 2 hours?
Well, they're putting dedicated teams on the process. So one organisation that we know of has a dedicated team, and a dedicated part of the building that they're actually confidentially put away from the rest of the team, so they can talk confidentially with customers. And they've just got a team, and that's their job, is to get back within 2 hours and make this stuff happen and go back to customers. And they love it. You would think that this is a really negative thing to be doing, is to call back customers, especially low scorers. But actually, it's a very positive process because customers are surprised. They're happy to take the call. They're engaged. They want to improve the business. They want to fix whatever problem they've got. So it's actually really not as kind of negative as you might think. We've also got customers that have got senior management doing this as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's really a lot about, that's really the best way to get a detractor to be a promoter is to come back to them fast. But I'm guessing, to do something in 2 hours, they're doing something else, aren't they? Now, these guys have got targets on it. And we found that this was really working for NPS leaders to set a target on these. Do you want to, again, comment on that about how people are using time targets to do follow-up?
Well, a lot of organisations are starting to use a bit like service request style targets. So X close within Y number of hours, or X% close within Y number of hours, and that's probably the best way to do this stuff. Because there are always things that are going to take longer, so average time isn't necessarily a great thing. Something like 90% within 2 days or 1 day, or something like that. They're better targets. Grade of service, if you're in a contact center, grade of service is the sort of thing that you'd be talking about here. So percentage within a certain amount of time, that's probably the best sort of target to look at for this stuff.
Yeah, the same thing. When we in CustomerGauge, the standard settings are 90% within 48 hours and 90% within a week. But I agree. I mean, I think that as people get better in this, just like high-performance athletes, the 2 hour benchmark is what I tell people that really need to move to. Right, let's move on to the proof that closed loop retention works, Adam. I mean, I think was a really interesting question. So we said, can you see any increase in retention doing close the loop? I was surprised about how effective this was. There were a couple of stats that came out of this. 71% said, look, we can't measure it, which I figured was going to be the case. But for those that could, 29% said they were seeing an increase in retention, and about 13% said they were doing more than 20% retention as a result of this. It's amazingly high.
Yeah, I've always said that it's easier to turn around a 0. It's easier to turn a 0 to a 10 than it is to take a 4 to a 10, for instance, because a 4 is not that engaged. A 0 is engaged. They're telling you they're engaged. But yeah, a lot of our customers are looking at the customers they call back through service recovery, and then they're looking at their retention rates versus people they don't, for whatever reason, contact. And they're seeing substantial lifts. And it's not that hard to do. And it is important because that service recovery call is expensive. Yep. And at some point, the organisation will say, please justify the cost of that service recovery call. So yep. You need to do this reporting. It's not a nice to have. You need to be reporting, even if you have to leave some of those people out, so you can get what's called a sample, so you can sample out some of the people.
Yeah.
You need to be able to prove this. Otherwise, the $10, $20, $30, $40 cost of that call in staff time is never going to be, long term is not going to be able to be justified. So it's a really important part of the process.
Yeah, and again, this speaks to some of the reporting that the NPS leaders are doing. They're making sure that they're getting the reporting for retention really embedded in their metrics here, and so that everything they work towards is able to prove the justification and ROI of the Net Promoter Program. So I really like this stuff, and it really says, 10% increase in retention is absolutely possible if you do this right. Now, I know this is something that you're really hot on, Adam, isn't it, about communications? So we're going to look about internal and external communication. So tell me a little about why internal communication is so important.
Well, it's really all about letting everybody know what's going on. We always talk to customers when they're rolling out Net Promoter, and we talk about the fear, uncertainty, and doubt in sharing this information transparently and widely across the organisation. And there is fear. There's fear that people might be named in a comment, or fear that the information might be used improperly. Once you roll it out, those frontline people are the people that it's hardest to remove that information from, because they can really see what's going on.
Yeah.
And most often, I'll say most often, they're the people that know the problems that are going on in the organisation, and customers are typically supporting the things that they are saying. And so for the frontline staff especially, it becomes a great way to go back to senior management and say, hey, these are the problems we've been talking about. Here's a stack of commentary from customers saying the same thing. We need to fix this stuff in this particular way. And so for them, it's very supporting for the rest of the organisation. So getting information out is a really important part of the kind of drive long term to make this stuff work.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just went forward one of that. I mean, I think this also speaks to, again, adoption from the top of the company. If the person at the top of the company says it's okay to share it, then the rest of the company just follows. It's transparent. And I know we've worked with customers all around the world, and also some of the ones that you've got that I visited as well. We know that there's good communication going on when they're actually putting the scores up in the lobby of the building and the comments. That's really one of the great signs, I think. Yeah.
So it also says management are very open with information too, and that's super critical.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about going outside the company. So two things we're talking about on this side. One is about going back to customers, and I'm going to get you to comment about why leaders do this, but it's also just outside the customers to go to shareholders and other stakeholders, maybe even going in some PR. So talk a little bit about how you've seen it being most effective NPS leaders sharing it with customers.
Well, I think there's a couple of ways that organisations share this data back with their customers. One is in B2B situations where they take back information around the relationship that the client has, or that the company has with the client. So it's very specific to that particular client. And that works well as a way to understand the relationship and how it's going, and what needs to be changed, what needs to be corrected, and understand kind of in detail what's happening. And it puts an accurate or an empirical set of information on what's going on in the business. So it's not just the senior manager and the senior account manager sitting together wondering what might be happening. It's real. It's very accurate. So that's a really good way to drive the relationship with organisations. But the second part is just to let customers know you're using the information.
Yeah, I agree.
Customers like to see that information is being used, and it's not just a survey that does nothing, that people are listening to it and making change. And I've often said to clients, even if the response is, we can't change that because of a legislative requirement or a legal thing that has to be done, at least customers say, oh, they heard it and they know about it, so they're doing something. So I
totally agree.
That also generates long-term response rates.
Yeah, it's about thanking clients for their input. I mean, I always like the analogy is that if you go to the doctors and you say, well, I've got this symptom and that symptom, and And that, what is it about, doc? And the doc's going to say, next patient, doesn't tell you about what he thinks. That's what happens for most organizations, collecting information from customers and doing it. But I really agree. You can see a big difference between the way that NPS leaders and laggards share information, either selectively or to people. Now, I think we've got some way to go. Go on.
Just let me jump in. I think it also underlies the way that leaders and laggards look at the feedback from customers. Laggards look at it as, we're afraid of what might be coming here and we don't want to share this too much in case it says anything negative and all that sort of stuff. So they want to keep the information close to their chest, which is the wrong thing to do. Leaders are using the information. We want to drive change. We want to improve our business with this information. What's important is everybody knows about it. Customers, staff, suppliers know about this information so we can use it to improve. And I think it's a completely different perception of what the information is there for. Laggards are concerned about who knows. Leaders want everybody to know so it can be used. Like a really fundamental difference in perspective.
I agree. I think this could be, when we do the survey next year, I think this might be one of the metrics that really changes, that goes up. I think this is, one of the things that we can do, Adam, is share information to make people feel more confident about sharing this information. In a sense, there's no such thing as bad news. The fact that you're telling clients that you are tracking sentiment and you're doing improvements on it, it's got to be a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
Let's look at moving into the retention sphere here. So tracking referrals is something, Jörn at our end, he's very, very keen on doing this. But again, a huge gap between people who are tracking referrals and that. Tell me a little bit about your experience in that area.
Yeah, I think tracking referrals is not something I've seen a lot of, because I think it's quite difficult for a lot of organisations to accurately track referrals. So it is one of those things that's not easy to do, because there's this difference between what people say they've done and what they've actually done, and they're different things. Yeah. And you do have to set up systems, but if you set those systems up, they can also point out to you who are the best customers to promote to as well. So there's some really good value in doing it, but it is not a simple task. So it's not surprising, I guess, that the laggards aren't doing it as often as the leaders.
Yeah, but a big difference. I mean, twice as many leaders are doing this. I think it's easier to do it in a B2C context. There's plenty of referral programs out there, especially with the rise of e-commerce. You can track these things much easier. But we're seeing some really good progress in B2B. And being able to do this and tracking referrals, and that, of course, is a major impact. I mean, if you get a customer to refer you to another, you've got lower acquisition costs, you've got more likelihood to close, higher prices. So it's a win-win. And this is again an area that we're really seeing that leaders are focusing on. And I'm looking forward to seeing some more progress on that in the future.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely.
This for me. This is my most shocking stat in the whole deck, actually. That I mean, I suspected that there were some companies out there that weren't sure about their retention rate. I was shocked, though, to find that 50% of NPS laggards had no clue about their customer retention rate. I mean, these are NPS professionals, Adam, right? Either the company doesn't know or they don't know. So what's your comment on this?
Well, I think retention is one of those things that's actually really hard for organisations to get their arms around. It's extremely important. It's a driver of value in the business, and it's a driver of Net Promoter, a driver of retention. We know that. But it is really hard for organisations to get their arms around it. It's easy, acquisition rate's easy. When a customer comes on, you ring the bell, new customer. When customers leave, it's not so easy to understand that, and nobody rings a bell when a customer leaves, and maybe we should start doing that. Maybe we should start ringing bells when customers walk out the door, because that's a really critical, the value of retention is completely underestimated by most people and most organisations. But I think part of the problem is nobody has a really good handle on how to value that retention rate. So it's not seen as important a metric in the organisation. But yeah, I was a bit surprised at the level of the not knowing the retention rate. It seemed to be extraordinary to me that so few organisations know the retention rate.
Yeah, it's really shocking actually.
Yeah.
On average, it was about 40%, but it was laggards. It was really really behind. I like the idea of having a bell to ring when customers leave. I think it'd be better to have a siren, actually. I mean, I think our philosophy, the CustomerGauge, is that we have this never lose philosophy. You should have a mindset that you're never going to lose a customer. And actually, some of the best practices I've seen is when the retention crew or the customer success crew bang a gong when they get a renewal or they get another order from a customer, and that really pushes a better behaviour than having a siren when they leave, maybe. But it's really good to reward that.
It's such an important thing, but most organisations don't track it very well. It's just one of those. Yeah. I think it's hard. Most organisations find it very hard.
Yeah, I think it is. But again, good CRM systems can help on this, and these tools are available now to do this. And an average that we found, because it varies retention rate, but an 80% average is a good rule of thumb. So 80% retention or 20% churn over 12 months is a good place to come to. Now, Adam, let's go into...
Just one really quick thing on that. That will vary by industry. Different industries have different numbers as well. So just be aware that if you are below 80 or above 80, that can be somewhat industry dependent as well.
I completely agree. But whatever industry you're in, measuring that churn rate is really important, and it's underdone.
Yeah.
It's really
not knowing is a big problem in that one.
It's kind of shocking, actually. Now let's go to the next one, which is about linking NPS to revenue. So this is when we're really going into the advanced work here. But this is really interesting. So NPS leaders are twice as likely to be able to link NPS scores to revenue than NPS laggards. So tell me first of all about the technique about linking NPS to revenue.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be as complex as you think or as people talk about. If you just look at some of the data, and it will depend on business and industry and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Typically, if you spend a little bit of time and you think about how the data looks, then it's not so hard to identify and link NPS to revenue. You might need 3 months worth of data or 6 months if you're in a retention rate style business where that's predominant. You might need a little bit more data, but it's not that hard. And so I would say organisations shouldn't be concerned about it. They should give it a go. It doesn't have to be 9 decimal places. If you can say, plus or minus 10% or even plus or minus 20%, then that's a really good number. And not having that number is more important than having a number that's 3%, that you might be worried about plus or minus 3% or something.
Yeah.
And it's actually not that hard. So you just need to look at what your customers are doing and look at retention rates versus scores and things like that. And if you have a good base of data, then it's a lot easier to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think at this level, you don't necessarily have to explicitly link the dollar per NPS value. I think we're just saying, do you accept in your organization that a rise in NPS has a rise in revenue? That's a good place to start, right? Because then you're already proving the program.
I agree.
Yeah.
But to do that, you will need to put a number in. The CFO will say, give me a number. What's it look like? And if you can get your CEO to help you build that number, then you are going to be so far ahead of everybody else. It's not funny. Because then that number will be believed by everybody.
Yeah, but again, you've got to have, I don't know, it's almost like a chicken and the egg situation here, but the CEO has to buy in. You have to get buy-in from the top in order to empower you to do this kind of math. But again, half of NPS leaders can link NPS to revenue. So this really proves how effective doing an NPS program can be. This is do it right, take the steps, you can do it. So let's go further on this one to see how effective it can be. I'm a retention guy, and this I was really delighted to see these numbers. So first of all, 80% of NPS leaders say NPS has helped their retention, and what impact does it have? And we found that on average, the improved retention was more than 5% for NPS leaders, which is quite impressive, right? If every company could improve their retention by 5%, that would be a really good stat. So give me some colour on that. Tell me a little bit about where you've seen it. So laggards are also seeing it on average as well, but NPS leaders nearly 3 times the retention rate. So tell me a little bit about, again, if you do the program right, why it's so impactful.
Well, it's so impactful because you're using the information to improve the business, and you're targeting the things in the business that are driving retention, because that's what NPS leads essentially is customer loyalty, which is customer retention. It's all the same stuff.
Yep.
And so if you get that right, then we will drive it. And what's really important about that 5.3% number is that you need to convert that into sales. And if you're in a business, in any business, you need to look at the 5.3% and say, all right, well, 5.3% doesn't sound like a lot maybe, but then convert that into how many additional sales you would need to make in order to make back the 5.3. And then all of a sudden, the whole conversation changes. It's like, well, you know, if we have 5.3% better retention, that means actually we need X% fewer sales, and it's going to be a lot more than 5%. It's going to be like 20 or 30% fewer sales to keep us where we are. If we keep our sales at the same point, where business is going to grow 20 or 30% faster than it would have without that retention rate. You need to do these numbers to prove and to show the value that comes through on retention. It's a really critical part of the process.
I completely agree. And again, so 5% was an average that we calculated on the range, but we found that about 20% of the sample were doing much better than that. In fact, some are reporting 15%, 20% increase in retention. And then these are not outliers. There's a solid cohort of NPS leaders who are really able to show this. So if anyone's thinking about how they can power up their NPS program, I mean, the evidence is really here that it comes out. We've also got some slides on return on investment on this, but we're seeing 3x return on investment for many people. I'm not going to show that today. It's too much detail. But again, what do you think, Adam? Is that something borne out by your experience in customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's move towards summing these things up. There's a lot of heavy data here, so let's just go through the summary on this one. So number one, Adam, companies don't know the retention rate. That was my shocking takeaway from that. That's really the first thing to work on.
But I would say they're not. It's not hard to calculate your retention rate. It really, honestly, is not.
Yeah.
So whilst you might not have terrific data on retention rate, it's not hard to do that. Look, you know, literally count the number of customers that have left in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Count the number of customers that you've got, divide one by the other, and that is your retention. That is your actually attrition rate. So your converse of that is your retention rate.
I agree.
It's actually not hard to do, but so do it is my suggestion.
And if you're running an NPS program, that is one of your jobs that you need to do. Don't leave it to somebody else. That should be in your wheelhouse to do that.
Absolutely.
So do NPS properly, and you increase retention. The stats are here. Half of the survey, 300 of them say absolutely you can increase it on average by 5% and get a 3x ROI. Astonishing proof, I think, that Fred Whitehill's work, Rob Marcus' work, really pays off if you do it right.
I agree 100%. I mean, retention. Yeah. NPS is a predictor of loyalty, so retention is a big part of the game.
Yeah. Let's talk about the 3 points on this one, right? So again, closing the loop. It seems simple. In practice, it's quite hard to marshal the resources in a company to do it, especially faster. But that's a great driver of retention. That's one of the things you need to do properly to do this, right? Adam, NPS leaders say thank you. This is my personal bugbear about saying thank you, but really this is about communicating externally to customers and getting back to them. And then the last one, Adam, do you want to pick that one up about sharing?
Yeah, I mean, we had a recent user group, and some of the people that stood up and talked about that, several of the organisations said that sharing NPS data transparently throughout the company was not just important, but a key plank of their success. This data cannot be seen as some secret that only management are allowed to know about. This has to be shared across the organisation, the breadth and length of the organisation, and everybody should have access to it regardless of who they are. Yeah,
great summary on that, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Well, listen, we've got some other questions here. We'll answer them offline, and we'll get back to you. But Adam, any last thoughts on the survey? Was there anything that was to stand out for you?
Yeah, for me, there's a couple of standouts, and the big ones were what do leaders see as driving that? Executive buy-in came up again and again and again. Empowerment, so don't just collect data, but empower your staff to make change with that data. So it's kind of a partnership. You have to do both things. And then relating NPS to company revenue or customer revenue in some way. That's really super critical. Because otherwise the program can be defunded at any time, and that's the real concern I have.
Yeah, I really agree. Okay, well, listen, thanks, Adam. Thanks so much for taking up your morning in Sydney. I've really enjoyed doing this with you. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that? They go to Genroe?
Yeah, Genroe.com is the website, or you can email me at aramshaw@genroe.com.au. I know there's an AU on the email address. I think there's a slide at the end that's got. Oh, that probably doesn't have that stuff on it. But in a follow-up, we'll send out some contact details as well.
Great, and I want to thank you for contributing so much to the open Net Promoter movement. It's great. Your content is certainly one of the things that really pushes this. So it's good night from me, Adam Dorrell, here in Boston.
And it's a good night from Adam Ramshaw it's good morning from Adam Ramshaw over here. I'm looking at the sky. It's not too bad. We'll get out and have a nice sunny day for the rest of it.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll publish the results. We'll make the download and the recording be available later. Cheers and have a great day.